Good morning. When this video was filmed about 4 years ago, it was also an election year. And so the first time I saw it, I felt like at the end of it, I was going to say, my name is Rhett Brown and I approve this message. But I am a Wingate alumnus 2 times. I graduated here with a bachelor's degree, and then a number of years later, I also got an MBA before getting an EDD, a doctorate at the University of Alabama, while I was still working here. And so this is personal for me, and so I'm glad you all are here. Welcome to Bulldog Scholars Day, and because it's so personal for me, I believe in this place, and it changed the entire trajectory of my life. And so I get to spend the next hour or so talking with you about college, its affordability, what makes Wingate special, and probably switching back and forth between Wingate and Wingate any number of times. So I'm glad that you and your family are here, and to give you some sense of who we have with us today, you see the states that are represented on the slide behind me. And while we have people from as close to Marshville and Monroe on either side of us, we also have a family here as far away as Gilman, Illinois. So the 9 states that are represented behind us on the map, just want to say, glad to have you here. So my story started in a small town in South Carolina. You can see it, Pillion, South Carolina. It's about halfway between Columbia and Aiken, equidistant from Orangeburg, South Carolina. And so it's somewhat in the middle of nowhere in rural South Carolina. And I was the first in my family to go to college. I was also a Pell Grant recipient. And when I was going to college, I didn't know much about what I should look for in a college, but I wanted to play college football. And I wanted to play college football because I was a 5', 10-inch, 155-pound wide receiver who had quarterbacked his high school team to an 0-10 record his senior year. Wasn't particularly fast, but I was, of course, convinced that I could play college football, and the only place that gave me the opportunity to do that was a small independent junior college in North Carolina. And so I went off to college not knowing if I had what it takes, not knowing what you needed to be successful. In fact, my parents didn't even go with me when I moved in for orientation. We just loaded up the car and sent me off to North Carolina for that. And that junior college was terrific for me. I was able to get a good start in college. It was the right transition, and was able to get a college scholarship from a small 4-year school in South Carolina. And so I transferred the middle of my sophomore year so that I could practice spring football at this 4-year institution that I transferred to. And I was in over my head there from a social capital standpoint. Most of the people who went to that school came from more privileged backgrounds than me. And in spite of the generous academic, financial aid, and football offer, I was struggling financially. So I decided this wasn't the right fit for me. I took off a year from college. Joined the Navy Reserve to get the GI Bill. Joined the Navy Reserve simply because they offered the highest signing bonus. Probably not the wisest way to make a decision. There's a reason why they offered a high signing bonus for what I did. But I did that for a year, got back in touch with my coaches at Lees-McRae Junior College and said, hey, I'm back on the market and want to play football somewhere else. And they said, well, you're in luck. There's this small school on the other side of Monroe, North Carolina, that is restarting their football program as a senior college. So this was 1986. And so there were about 15 of us that joined the football program in 1986. And so I had no idea that what started out as a very accidental journey and landed me here, that would indeed change the entire trajectory of not only my life, but my family's life, and I'm sure future generations of my family. And so that's partly why I think I get asked to share this story, because it is so personal for me, and I thought I was somehow unique. But one of the really remarkable things about having this job is that I hear that same story repeated by hundreds, thousands of alumni that Wingate transformed them in many ways that are immeasurable. So when you're making a college decision, where to go to school, you essentially have three choices to make, three decisions to make. The first one is an intellectual decision. It's facts and figures. You can usually find out from a school's website what you need to know. How far is it from my home? Do they have my major? How big is the school? What are the student activities that they have? So an intellectual, facts and figures. Second is financial. Can my family afford this school? And then the third is actually the hardest one to make, and it's an emotional decision. And that decision is, do I fit there? Can I see myself on this campus? Is it right for me? And people will use language often like, I just knew, when I was on the campus tour or when I visited, when I drove across the railroad tracks, I just knew that this was my place. And so you all are in that spot, trying to determine if this is the right fit for you, the emotional decision, and hopefully today we'll be able to help you figure that out. You hear a lot of noise in the media these days about, is college worth it? And quick story, I'll try to make it quick, not many of my stories are, but when I first got this job, it was a couple of months after getting it, and I had worked at Wingate for a long time, since graduating in 1989, and we were at a youth event for our church, and we were standing around. I was standing with a local high school principal and with another gentleman whose family he inherited a car dealership from. And they're going on about not everybody should go to college. And I mean, this goes on and on and on. And I'm standing there and I'm listening, and they're making a lot of good points. Surely not everybody needs to go to college to be successful in life, certainly. And so, but at some point I'm like, gosh, man, you're a college president. You need to say something, defend yourself. And so at some point I said, you guys make a lot of good points, but it is the fact that if you get a college degree, a bachelor's degree, that equates to about $1 million more of lifetime earnings. And I said, that doesn't matter what you major in, and it doesn't matter where you get your bachelor's degree. And the high school principal looked at me and said, that's your opinion. And I said, no. I said, those are facts from the U.S. Department of Labor. What I've listened to for the last 20 minutes are opinions. And so what you see behind me is a slide that reflects exactly that. There are many more benefits for going to college than just financial, but this is a significant one. And so you'll hear a little bit more about this in the slide, next few slides. The other thing that you hear today is that we're saddling college students with this crushing debt. A, I don't think that's true writ large. B, I know that's not true here. And how do I know that? Again, some facts and figures on the screen behind me. What you have here are the loan amounts of our students who have graduated, undergraduate students, from 2014 to 2017. So the last 4 years of graduating classes. And you see here that 495 of those graduates didn't borrow anything. 1,000 students approximately borrowed between $1,000 and $35,000. Then you get to the students that I worry a little bit about. 160 borrowed between $35,000 and $50,000, and then you see 40 students borrowed more than $50,000. And then you see in the upper right that our average indebtedness was just over $26,000. When I graduated from Wingate, I had attended 3 schools, had managed to pack 4 years of education into 5 years, and I owed about $10,000 in debt. And I made the comment at one of these events, not doing my math beforehand, which is always dangerous. I said, when I graduated from college, I had a $10,000 indebtedness, and what I got in return was a life-changing education. And I said, or I could have taken that $10,000 and purchased a new Chevy Malibu. Today, fast forward, $26,448. For that average indebtedness, our students have a life-changing education. Or you probably get a new Chevy Malibu for that. And so I didn't know if my analogy held up. In one family that was here, the father had a rate of change, was where time value of money, appreciation. So he typed into his calculator, $10,000 in 1988 is worth what? in 2018. And he came up to proudly tell me that, and he had his phone turned around, and I'm like, uh-oh, I didn't do well. And then he turned it around, and I missed it by $200. All right. So again, when people are talking about the price of college rising at such a drastic rate, it's simply not true, all right, and certainly not here. And affordability is important to us. It's important to me. I have an 18-year-old son who's been out of high school 1 year, and I'll talk about him in a minute. And then I have a daughter who turned 16 today. And so college is certainly on my mind. In fact, my voice is a little hoarse because for her 16th birthday, I took her and her friends to a concert Thursday night, and I got back way too late. So my apologies if I have to take a sip of water here in a second. But when people ask me what keeps me up about my job, it is this affordability question, because we need resources to make our education better. Resources come from the students who often need us most and can afford us least. So there's this inherent tension between affordability and excellence. And so if there's a big challenge, my job has a number of challenges, but if there's a big one, it's this idea of affordability, and I think we do it well here at Wingate. I also sometimes talk to family about a rule of thumb that I think helps them to remember, and especially if you can adhere to it. You shouldn't borrow more for college than you think you will make in your first year of employment out of college. So let me give you a few examples. If you decide you want to be a physician assistant, and you can do that here at Wingate University, you can borrow $100,000. All right? And that's healthy. That degree is worth that from a financial perspective. If you are going to be an accountant, get your CPA, you can borrow $50,000 or $60,000. If you're going to be an elementary school teacher, that number is about $35,000 for starting teachers in this state. All right? So keep that in mind as a rule of thumb. If your family does need to borrow, you need to do that in the context of what you're thinking about studying. I wish that those of us who work in higher education were better at communicating what the actual cost of college is. I think state schools aren't good at describing all of the additional fees that go along with it. And I think independent colleges like us have the sticker price that no one pays. And then there's a real cost of going. So what I've tried to do here is to give you real out-of-cost numbers for Wingate University education. A lot of people think that students, when they're considering us, they're also considering Lenore-Rhine, Queens, Methodist College, Lynchburg in Virginia, Oglethorpe in Atlanta. You know, they think that students who come to us are most often looking at other independent colleges, and it's actually not true. The first 8 schools that we cross applications with are all schools in the University of North Carolina system. UNCC being number 1, and that's because of geography. East Carolina, UNC Wilmington, App State, Western Carolina, those are the schools that many of our applicants are considering. So I think it's helpful to see what is the real cost of the UNC system, all 16 schools, and then what are the out-of-pocket costs at Wingate. So what you have here are estimated tuition fees, room and board, books, everything all included, and then the sticker price. The average scholarship that a student gets coming to Wingate is $24,000, and that's before need is factored in, and that's before talent is factored in. Talent being a music scholarship or an athletic scholarship or something non-academic that has some sort of talent-related scholarship. So you get a net cost, $23,000, $17,000, that's pretty comparable. But the thing you also need to take into consideration is that it takes 4 years to graduate at Wingate, and the average time to degree in the UNC system is 5.2 years. All right? More of our students who aren't redshirting for a team or who aren't stopping after 2 years and transferring into our pharmacy school and finishing in 6 with a PharmD, We have more students that graduate in 3.5 years than we do that take longer than 4 years. All right, we have more students who finish early because of all the credits they bring with them now from early college or AP or you name it. So when you factor in the 4-year time, you get then a total cost, 4 years times 23, 5 times 17, that gap closes. And if you were if you had a job that paid you $35,000 in your first year out of college, those are foregone earnings if you need to go to a 5th year of school. So once you factor that in, a $57,000 net cost versus an $85,000 net cost at a typical UNC system school. So when people think about us being unaffordable, us being independent, private higher ed, the numbers just don't stack up. Other schools are different, but these are how ours stack up against the UNC system. The other thing I should probably point out here is sometimes I use another slide and some data that show the average cost for a student who attends Wingate right now as an undergraduate this year. And that number, on average, tuition, room, and board, everything but books, and by board I mean meal plan, tuition, room, and meal plan, the middle 50%, from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile, our middle 50% pays between $11,000 and $18,000 per year to attend Wingate. And again, that is less than a student pays at Chapel Hill who doesn't receive need-based money. All right, so affordability is key here for us. So we've talked about affordability, and we're very proud of those numbers. And behind me on the screen are also some numbers we're very proud of. There are 36 independent colleges in North Carolina, from Duke and Wake and Davidson to Wingate, Queens, Lenore-Rhine, Belmont Abbey. You know, there are 36 of us. We're the fastest growing of those 36 independent colleges in North Carolina. Turns out that we knew we were growing, which is a good thing. It means that what we're doing is resonating with the families that we're serving. But it also comes with some inherent challenges. You know, they called them growing pains for a reason, because sometimes they hurt a little bit. But growth is a good thing for a college or university, because with a certain amount of scale, we can invest more in the educational enterprise of our students. So we're proud of being the fastest growing in North Carolina. And then we got some surprising news just a month or so ago. It was in the Chronicle of Higher Education, and it listed the fastest growing colleges and universities in the United States. And when you look at independent, private, doctoral granting institutions, we're the 8th fastest growing university like that in the entire United States. And so we were pretty proud of that statistic. And you see the concentric circles that are drawn on the map behind me. That's from Columbia, South Carolina, Winston-Salem, Johnson City, Tennessee. And the reason we drew that map is those are the other large healthcare education schools. University of South Carolina, East Tennessee State, and Wake Forest. We're the largest healthcare educator on the post-secondary level in that entire region. So for upstate South Carolina and western North Carolina, we're the #1 healthcare educator. You see some student to faculty ratios. You see our typical profile of our students, you know, from an academic perspective. You see an average class size. Now, in all honesty, our classes can range from 5 to 55, but the average class size here is 21. You see our enrollment here, 3,600 this year, 2,600 of whom are traditional undergraduates commuting to this campus. And then the other thing that we're #1 in that we're super proud of is our athletic program. Not only are they really good on the field, on the court, in the pool, on the track, but they're also really talented students. And so I think there are about 320 NCAA Division II schools in the country. We're #1 since 2000 in the number of academic All-Americans, all right? So #1 out of 320 for academic All-Americans. If you look in North Carolina, we're #1 across all NCAA all NCAA divisions, so Division II, Division III, and Division I. And so we're number one for academic All-American since 2000. Number two is a little school you may have heard of in Durham, North Carolina, Duke University. And then number three is the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So again, I think humility is important personally, but for our organization, these are some statistics that I'm pretty proud of and don't mind talking about it. I tell this story at new student orientation, so I'm going to tell you, so I'm going to need a new story by the time orientation rolls around for you. And that is my cousin Liz. I grew up on a dirt road, still dirt. It was named for my great-grandfather, Bub Shumpert Road. My closest neighbor was a mile away, and they were my cousins, cousin Liz. Liz was born 1 month before me, and so Liz was my mentor, my guide, up until the point I went off to college. Liz was unlike me. She was motivated, she was smart, she was hardworking, she was conscientious, she was obedient. She did all the things that a parent wants their child to do. And so cousin Liz, more often than not, had to look after me in lots of things. And so Liz got essentially the top academic scholarship at the University of South Carolina. She went there, knocked school out in 4 years. And so by the time I was a senior here, she'd been out of college for 2 years. And so she came to visit me a few weeks before my graduation in 1989, and we stayed in the apartments that are just north of us here, North Campus Apartments, creative name. And then she came here and visited. She got here on a Friday, and we walked across campus to eat in the dining hall, which is on the south side of campus. And that walk took us about 45 minutes because we kept stopping and talking to different people. And then we had a 2-hour dinner, moved around the dining hall a lot, just interacting with lots of different people, including a friend of mine from Helsinki, Finland, whose house I had stayed at when we went on our winter national program to Helsinki, Finland, and St. Petersburg, Russia. And then another 45 minutes back, and again, talking to a lot of people, introducing my cousin Liz. And we get back to my apartment, and she says something I'll never forget. She said, I went to the University of South Carolina and had a small experience. And she said, you came here and had this incredibly big experience. And again, I'm the slow one, Liz is the smart one. I'm like, tell me what you mean, I don't understand. And she said, University of South Carolina is very isolating, that you rarely see the same people over and over again. She said, I certainly didn't have dinner in my faculty members' homes. People didn't know my name. You know a lot more people than I do. You know them on deeper levels than I do. And so she said, you had this really big experience at what I would consider a small school. And I thought, that's why Liz is smarter than me. She notices things like that. But Liz went to a big school and had a small experience. I came here and had that life-changing experience. I talk about Liz as my mentor growing up, even though she was only a month senior to me. And mentorship is critically important to us here, whether that's peer mentors, whether that's caring staff and coaches and others, and then a faculty that personally invest in you. And because mentorship is so important here, 2 years ago, we started a new tradition in which the words on our seal are faith, knowledge, and service. And so we asked our graduating class to present a mentor medallion at our baccalaureate service to a faculty or staff member here who was a mentor to them, either in faith, knowledge, service, all three, 2 of the 3, you name it. And then the faculty members and the staff members wear that medallion at those students' graduation. And it's profound for the students to realize the importance of mentors in their lives here, and it means the world to the faculty and the staff here to be presented with those medallions. So, if this is the day we're talking about fit, and can you see yourself here, here's some more numbers to give you an idea of who we are, some of the facts and figures, the intellectual part of the decision to help you with the emotional decision. So where are students from? While 73% of our undergraduates are from North Carolina, they come from 41 states and 48 different countries. Our student body is ethnically more diverse than at least 6, some of this data is hard to get, than at least 6 of the public universities in this state. And 95% of our graduates are in a field that they chose 6 months after graduation or they're in graduate school. So these are some outcome numbers that we're very proud of. Right now, our gender breakdown is 60-40, 60% women, 40% men, and that's a number that's trending in that direction at healthy colleges and universities across the country. Just 10 years ago, it was 50-50, but women are outpacing men on college campuses. And it's not dissimilar to my household, with a daughter who's 16 and ready to start college today, and a son who is still figuring that stuff out. You see here 280 years plus of our students take part in Greek life. 83% of our undergraduates live on campus. 22% of our undergraduates participate in one of our 22 intercollegiate athletics programs. And then you have more than 700 students who participate in campus recreation. And that gives you a little bit about who we are. So a couple of other stories, and then I'm going to break here, and we're going to take some of your questions. So I mentioned my son earlier. He is a bright kid. He's a good kid. He's not Cousin Liz. The apple falling from the tree, that sort of thing. It happened in my house. And so he's a gifted, bright kid, not sure what he wants to do. And so we decided that starting college probably wasn't the best thing to do right after high school. So we were considering a number of options. At one point, he thought he might want to play Division III baseball, and then he realized how much time it took to do that sort of thing from some friends who went off and played baseball, and said, not sure I want to play sports in college. I was in favor of the Marine Corps. I eventually talked his mother and him into the Coast Guard until he found out it was a 3-year commitment, and so that was off the table. And then at some point, he announced to my wife's father, my father-in-law, I'm about to say something super stereotypical here, and I apologize. He's an Asian American, first generation Asian to this country, and he's a Georgia Tech physics major. And so his appreciation for education, and it's important, makes mine look modest. And so when my son, about 16, announced at the dinner table that he was looking to go to a basketball school for undergraduate and a football school for graduate school, my father-in-law's jaw dropped open, and he's like, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean? And Wyatt's like, yeah, I want to go to a school like Villanova, and follow them for, basketball as an undergraduate, and then maybe LSU for graduate school and follow their football team. And my father-in-law, he's a big man, he hit the table. He said, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. So again, this is our college decision process at my house. So we ultimately decided on a gap year for him. And so what he's doing, he's at a program at American University in Washington, D.C., where he does an internship 3 days a week. He takes class 1 day a week, and then he has an internship seminar. And he's going to do that for this first semester, and then we're going to figure out what's best for him. And we looked at a number of other gap year opportunities. In Columbia, there's a program called City Year. It's not unlike AmeriCorps, in which you volunteer. And so we looked at a number of things. And so to my friends around that campfire, the high school principal and the car dealership owner, that he didn't have to build himself, they were right. Not everybody needs to go to college immediately after high school, including my son. And so for each family, I know there are a different set of circumstances that you have to consider. So my daughter's very different, and again, staying on the in-law track, we were at his graduation party, high school graduation party just a few months ago, and he had finally gotten the focus to shift off him, and he said, and the focus was shifted onto my daughter, and so my mother-in-law starts quizzing Isabel about where she's going to go to college, and my mother-in-law and her mother were both UCLA graduates. They're native Californians. And so they said to Isabel, why don't you go to UCLA? And Isabel looks at me and smiled, because that is my daughter's dream school. And then I had to explain to her that it is harder to get into UCLA. We had this conversation a couple of years ago, that it is harder to get into UCLA as an out-of-state student than it is to get into Harvard. All right? And so I said, Isabel, you're a good student. You're not an out-of-state UCLA admit. all right? So let's think about others. She thinks she might want to play soccer in college, and so we're talking about this. And so my mother-in-law is giving me all of these, well, what about this school? What about this school? All on the West Coast, mind you. They live in Seattle, Washington. And I saw quickly what was up here. And I was offering some feedback on what I thought those colleges, what the chances of Isabel, why I thought it would be a fit. And my mother-in-law looked at me and she said, "Do you think you might know too much about this?" And I said, "Does a dentist know too much about teeth?" At that point, my wife put her hand on my arm and it's like, "You probably need to stop now." So before I ask Liz Biggerstaff, another transfer athlete, Wingate alum, to the stage, let me tell you one last story. Couple of, I guess 8-10 months ago, I was in North Carolina, 2 different college campuses, back-to-back days. One of them is a very selective private school in North Carolina. And we were talking about community service, community engagement, what their students, faculty, and staff do in their local community. The person responsible for it said they have to introduce their students to their community because their community is poorer and more diverse than the selective students who come to their campus. And I thought that was sad. And I was proud because we don't have to introduce our students to the community we live in. They are from the community we live in. So the very next day, I was on a campus that is open enrollment. For them to be successful, they depend a lot on federal financial aid and borrowing and other things, and they pretty much admit whoever applies. And the president there was talking candidly with me about their challenges. And I left there thinking, I'm glad that we're not in that situation either. And what I realized that most schools serve one end of the continuum or the other. And that what is a part of our strength, I think, is that we're good at serving that entire continuum. And so following those 2 days, later that week, I was trying to call one student, an alum of ours. I was trying to call her name. And her first name is Grace. And I said the name of a current student whose name is Grace. And the person who was with me corrected me and said, "Now that's the tale of 2 Graces." And I'm like, that'll preach. So one Grace graduated from a very selective private school in Louisville, Kentucky, came here to play volleyball where she was an academic All-American. She was a Fulbright scholar. She now works in Haiti in relief services, Puerto Rico actually, sorry. She works in Puerto Rico in relief services. She was an NCAA finalist for Woman of the Year. About 600 of the finest women athletes in this country are nominated for that award. Grace number 1 was in the final 30 for that award. Rock star, Wonder Woman. She could have gone anywhere, done anything, and she talks passionately about how this place invested in her and took her places she never thought she could go. The other Grace is a local young woman who was raped by a church member in her church at the school that she attended in that church. Local school system took her in, helped in her rehabilitation. She was a part of our United Way campaign in this county a number of years ago. Best year we've ever had, largely because of Grace's testimony. And she comes to an event in which we're appreciating and thanking her, and I'm just overcome with, she did this for this community. She told her story. What's in this for her? And so after the event, I'd been president about 2 weeks at that point. And so after that event, I said to her, Grace, I'm blown away by your story, your courage, what you've done for other people that you don't even know. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And she asked me who I am and what I do. I said, I work at Wingate University. She said, oh gosh, I'd love to go to Wingate University. She said, that'd be a dream of mine. And I said, well, where are you going to go to college? She said, oh no, I can't afford college. I couldn't go to a place like Wingate University. And so I took my card out. I didn't have new business cards yet. And I gave her my card and I said, today, you can go to Wingate University. And so I gave her my card. She got emotional. I said, not now. You and your mom come see me later. We're going to figure this out. Grace is still working at it. We've had some stops and starts, but she's now married and happy and healthy and going to graduate from Wingate very soon. And so the school superintendent, who is very protective of Grace, came over and said to her, she was emotional, and she said, she thought somebody had said something to her that upset her. And she was waving my card, and she was emotional, and she said, no, this man, I think, did something nice. And she said, can he do this? And so the school superintendent took the card, and she said, a couple of months ago, I'm not sure, but today, yes, he can. I am very proud that we're a university that's a tale of two graces, that we can serve that entire continuum well, from students who are the least of us, among those students who are the most privileged, and find a way to live in community. I'm proud that we can do that here, and I hope that we can be a model for our country that I think needs a little more of that modesty and humility and community these days. So thank you for your time, and we'll take some questions now.